So every time I have a recurring guest, I look back to see when their last episode was, and yours was in 2021, which is wild. And it's now 2024. And I'm so happy that you came back.
Oh, I'm so glad to be back. Like our first conversation was so good that I feel like a part two is just inevitable, you know?
No, it is. And before I pressed record, I was telling Danielle that I always get pitched certain topics for the podcast, and it's always like the regular ones, like feeding kids, sleep is a big one for the kids, not necessarily for the parents. Um, but this is such a niche topic and it's so important. And I think it's so generalizable, like motherhood and friendships and growing older and maintaining friendships or gaining new friendships is so important, but nobody really talks about it. And I'm sure this is why you have like you're wildly successful. You have a new book coming out because people are like, "Oh my god, yes, this is important."
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I do think it's something that we kind of assume should be intuitive. And it sometimes seems like the extent of the discourse around friendship is you either have friends or you don't. And if you don't, what's wrong with you? And, for moms, friendships are so important, but we put it on the back burner because there's other more, time sensitive things we've got to get to. So I'm glad we're having this conversation too, because it's so necessary.
Yeah, and what I'm always curious when people write a book on their topic, like what was that process like for you? Like I imagine it's like a huge undertaking and does it feel good to be like, "Okay, it's packaged up, it's ready to go."
It does. It feels good to be done. But I'll tell you, like when I, was blessed with the book deal in 2021, I'm like, this is amazing. And I had this idea of myself writing the book on my laptop in a cafe with like
Yep.
a cigarette. I don't even smoke, but like with a cigarette, a black,
In Paris.
yeah, yeah, in Paris, black turtleneck, hairs in a bun. And the reality is, especially when you're a mom, is writing is such like you're stealing time. So, it's
Mm.
pushing the stroller while I'm talking in a voice note on my phone or in the shower and I get an idea and I gotta hop out to write it down. And that's what the process looked like because that's all I had. So it's not what I expected, but it came together and people have been very supportive. So I'm so excited to get it in people's hands.
I like my goal one of my goals, I would love to write a book. I have always wanted to. And I'm the exact same way. I'm like, "No, you know what? I need to book a
Yeah.
vacation and just have total silence around me for, several weeks and put my phone away, and then I'm just gonna write my book." But it has to happen that way. But it's no, it's very messy.
It's so messy. Yeah, yeah. So it came together, gosh darn it. So we'll see. We'll see what people say on Goodreads.
When does it actually come out? Can people pre-order it, or
Yes, so
what's it
they can
called?
pre-order now. The book's called Fighting for Our Friendships and it's out May 7th, but you know how authors are, but you get it early, you get your pre-order goodies. But I'm hoping people find it helpful. I'm on TikTok and socials and all the things, but it's like it would be nice to have one place where all that stuff lives. So that's the goal is that it helps women to have more resilient friendships, especially in this time period as moms and for those who are in their 30s, especially, I think it might be helpful.
Yeah. So, for people who are new listeners who did not hear our last conversation, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself, your family, and how you became so interested in the topic of female friendships?
Yeah, so I am a friendship coach and educator. And I joke that when I go to parties and people are like, so what do you do? I'm just like, oh God, because I know it's going to be a thing, right? They're looking at me like, girl, is that a real job? Or they're
Yeah.
like, let me tell you everything. So I actually started as a high school teacher. I was teaching 12th graders. And between classes and after school, it's the number one thing they wanted to talk about. So I kind of had a front row seat into the ways issues of connection and belonging impacted everything else, their confidence, their attendance,
Mm.
their academic performance, if they were like well integrated in some kind of social group. And I always joke that I have the pencil eraser marks on my seating chart to prove it, especially with the girls, like I thought you guys were cool yesterday, but somebody said, whatever. And so I left that world and got into PR and marketing. And I made the foolish mistake of thinking that, oh, I'm working with these high achieving, charismatic adult women. But, it wasn't long before I realized that they too, privately, secretly, have their own friendship issues. But you're not leading with that because it detracts from the image of being a successful, self sufficient woman who's got it together. So you're not going to go and admit you're not satisfied with your female friendships. You just kind of fake it. And so for the past 6 years, I've leveraged my background in education to study what the research has to say about women's cooperation, communication, and conflict.
Mm. And you have two little
I have
kids?
two. So I have a 5-year-old Elijah and a 2-year-old Harper. And I was 8 months pregnant with Harper when I got the book deal. And when the book comes out, she'll be 2.5.
Nice. And obviously, most people listening are parents, most are probably moms. What was your experience? Because I'm sure when you're an expert in a topic like this, you reflect on your own journey with regard to that topic. So, before kids versus after kids, what would you say? Like, how did your friendship, how did they change? Or did you make new friends? Did you struggle to find friends or maintain friendships when you became a mom?
Yes, yes, and yes. All those
Yeah.
things, you know? I think this is one of those things where intellectually we all know friendships change, like we know that. But when it happens, it's so jarring and you're not sure what to do. Is it me? Is it them? What's happening right now? And you make the mistake of thinking how it is right now is how it's always going to be. And so, when my friendship shifted, I always say, I feel like I have good stories. I met some of my best friends after becoming a mom, and mom stuff kind of helped us to bond. It helped me to feel seen and understood. And then we expanded from there. We realized there were other things that we love about one another and that bring us together, but that was our in. And then also there's some, friendships that came in and then dropped off, mom friends who were, openly kind of critical of all the things. And it's like, I'm just doing my best over here, but you always got something to say, and then that creates a little bit of an emotional distance as well, because, who has time for that? So yeah, my friendships have definitely evolved since becoming a mother. And I think I've become a better friend since having a daughter, even though she's 2. And I think it's
Interesting.
because I'm hyper aware of what she will experience, being rejected or not, or being a friendly and inviting girl, to her friends, or is she going to be, not so kind, or, being confident. So all those things, when I look at her, I'm like, oh gosh, and with my son too, but I think it's more obvious with my daughter. That's made me reflect a lot on how I want to show up because she's watching.
Interesting. I never thought about looking at our kids, but it's so true. Even when we get invited to birthday parties, like
Mhm.
one of my favorite things to do is, or like if I pick Milo up from school, but he doesn't know that I'm there yet, is just like observing.
Yes. Mhm.
Like, why is that so fun as a parent? Because sometimes I think he acts differently. Like he's not as goofy and silly when we're there,
Oh,
you know?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's so goofy and silly. And then sometimes I find if we're there when he's with his friends, he's a little bit more reserved or like shy,
Mm.
which is funny because I am not that way, but my husband is that way. So it's almost like when we're around, he's like, acts like my husband. And then when he's alone with his friends or like at the parent teacher interview, they're like, yeah, like he's so silly. Like he loves making people laugh. I'm like, oh my God, it's so interesting.
It
Um,
is interesting. Yeah, and I think probably because we don't really get to see them with a bunch of kids at home, so then finally
yeah.
being able to spy and be like, "Who are you to others?" You know? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Like what do other people Yeah, the parent teacher interviews are so like to hear that he's like so caring to other people and you know,
Good job,
cuz
mom.
yeah, cuz like we don't get to see that.
Yeah.
Especially him because he's an only child. Like I see how he interacts with his cousin like when we visit with my family and stuff, but I don't really get to see that otherwise.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I like to sneak in at the school pickup and like hiding in the bushes watching them play. Oh, that's creepy. I wanted to jump back to your book for a second. What's the overarching topic or theme of the book? So if people pre-order it, what can they expect to get out of it?
I love that you asked that because one of my pet peeves actually is when authors are like, this is the book to solve your problems. And I always say, I hope that this is one of many books in your library about how to have
Yeah.
better platonic relationships. And that's why I wrote it, is because there's very little literature on that kind of relationship, which is very interesting to me. And so the essential question we're trying to answer is, the research tells us that women's friendships are deeper and more intimate than men's, but they are more fragile. Why is that? So we're trying to make the case for how can we strengthen our friendships, make them more resilient? Why do we have higher expectations in our close relationships, both romantic and platonic? The research tells us, why don't they tend to last as long on average? What is that about? And then how can we get past some of the most common hiccups? Especially, I keep going back to in our 30s, where sociologists say there's a friendship dip. And especially as moms, when we have so many other things competing for our time, it can feel especially either impossible or irrelevant. But being equipped with the skills to know, how do I overcome tensions? How do I develop friendships that feel more meaningful to me, is what we're trying to answer. And I'll end with this. This winter, a lot of people were talking about this Harvard study. It's the longest running study on happiness, and it's gone over 80 years. And they examined all these different factors to see what makes us happy. And the number one thing that determines your overall well being and life satisfaction is the quality of your relationships. It didn't say anything about your income, whether or not you have kids, whether or not you get married, but the quality of the relationships. So how do we make our friendships more quality, is kind of the goal.
And if somebody were to ask, like, what makes a quality friendship? Like, how do I know if I have quality friendships or not?
Yeah, so it's so funny because people define friend differently, but I think most of us, even though we might conjure different images when we say this, but most of us tend to lean to something about feeling safe, seen, and supported. As soon as you don't feel safe, as soon as you feel like she doesn't get me, as soon as you feel like she doesn't show up for me, there are issues. So kind of that safe, seen, supported combination is what makes us feel like, wow, this is a really meaningful friendship in my life. And then the degree to which we want to deepen that maybe varies. But those tend to be the essential things that people in general, but especially women, have gripes about if it's not going that way.
And is it fair to say that some people just don't like jive together?
Oh my gosh.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
because in my mind, I'm like, is it the case that like you could meet a potential friend and be like that feeling safe and, happens quickly, whereas with other people, like they could be acquaintances and like hang out and stuff, but it never gets to that point.
100%. I mean, this is not very popular. Like, I don't do too many videos on this because I know they aren't going to be as popular. But, you know, the reality check is that's one feeling that I need to feel like this is a quality friendship. I feel safe here to be myself. I feel seen and understood. I feel supported. We have each other's back. That's basic, right? But the reality is there might be other factors that determine whether or not we can actually be friends. We might have different friendship goals, meaning I'm more high touch and I like to check in once a week and do things together. And I have certain expectations and you do not. You're looking for something different from friendship. So try as I might, this ain't gonna work without me being
Mm.
unsatisfied or resentful. We might be friendships for a time. You might start adopting some new worldviews. And I'm like, okay, I care about you, but I don't even know, I don't know how to talk to you. And it's becoming really hard. And at some point, I mean, the reason we have friendships, which are very elective, is because it does offer some bit of ease to my life. So when it does become too hard in a persistent way, I don't know what to talk to you about. I feel like we're fighting all of the time. I mean, yeah, that's going to make a difference. And then finally, it just might be logistics. I can only go deep with so many people. In fact, there's research that finds that we only have the cognitive capacity to maintain 3 to 5 ultra close relationships. So I might love you and love spending time with you. We have a great time. But because of what is required of me to maintain something with depth, I'm showing up, I'm giving you my time, which is a limited resource. I'm trying to remember the details of the last thing you shared with me. I can't do that with 10, 15 people. So sometimes it's just logistics. And the last thing I'll say is, you asked about acquaintances. We actually do need both those tight relationships where we feel intimately known, but we also need what sociologists refer to as weak ties. So I don't think you should go around calling people like, oh yeah, that's my weak tie. It's not flattering, or like friendship necklaces that are like weak tie.
Weak tie.
But, we need those relationships too, the ones that are looser, because the research shows that they add value as well. You might have access to information that I need that my besties can't provide. They're not in that world. Or you put me on to certain resources, or there's research that finds that you're more likely to get connected with a job opportunity through a weak tie. because they have
Mm,
one foot in your world and one foot in a completely different world because they're kind of out there on the outskirts of your social network, which is a good thing. It's kind of like the concept of, looking to your partner to satisfy all the things. Well, it's kind of the same thing. My two besties can't satisfy all the things. One of my besties is child free, and that's fine, and she's supportive. But there's other things I kind of need as well. So we need that variety. That texture is important. And the research finds that people with relational diversity are happier people. So it's nice to have the mom friend, your neighbor friend, your gym friend, your church friend, your happy hour friend. So we need all those connections. They're all valuable.
variety of friends.
Hmm.
What about, like, I'm thinking about my own experience. Like, I made a group of core friends in grad school when I lived in Ottawa. So they still live there, but now I live near Toronto.
Hmm.
So we're not, close in that sense. It's not like I'm just like popping into, like, I used to live in the same apartment building as them. We were like real life friends, like the TV show, like they lived above and below me. It was so cool. But like, I never feel like I lose touch with them or like I can't just text them at any time that I want. Or if something major happens to one of us, it's like you reach out to that group of friends, even though we're not texting every day or going for coffee or keeping up. Like, so is there something to say about the value of having those friends that maybe you made when you were younger and in a different stage of life? And they're like, I will probably still be close to them when I'm 80 years old,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think there's something special about, the person who's known me for 20 years and has been able to evolve with me, because sometimes she reminds me of things I need to know or myself. Recently I know I was having a chat with a friend about, a marriage argument, and I forgot how long we've known each other because she was like, okay, but I remember when you first told me yada yada yada. And Danielle, you said, and it was just so interesting to be like, wow, you've known me, you've been with me, so you can offer a perspective that other people just can't. And there's something really special about that. And yeah, every friendship, looks different. We have friends who, I know that in a crisis she'll be there, but we don't talk every week. And I respect all those layers. I just say, as long as you feel satisfied in it, both parties feel satisfied, because I know the low maintenance friend thing is a popular conversation and I have some feelings on that. However, if both parties feel satisfied, I mean, who am I to say anything? But if you have one party who's like, yeah, I'm low maintenance, I'm super chill, I don't like to talk often, do too much. But the other person is like, man, I'm kind of yearning for more. I wish you called more. I wish,
Mm,
then that would be an issue. So it's everybody offers something different. I think the key is to ask ourselves, am I genuinely satisfied with friendship and community? And if not, do I feel like I have the confidence and skill set to enjoy more satisfaction in my friendships?
yeah. I always feel like, for example, I spent a lot of time with one of my friends that I made, like childhood friends. Like we were one thing that I will say about when you make friends and you keep friends from a certain time in your life, like let's say high school, elementary school, they're also so close to your family.
Hmm.
Because like I lived with my parents, obviously, and like she basically like would come over all the time. My parents are like her second set of parents, you know?
Yeah.
So that is almost like a whole different layer of, it's like they know my whole family closely, like have been to barbecues, they know my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, like whereas when you make friends as an adult, they're more removed from the rest of your family, especially with me because my family lives up north.
Hmm.
But that is like that's an interesting part of it, you
Yeah. And
know?
you know what I think is so beautiful about that, which is tricky because sometimes people are like, I want to let a friendship go. It stresses me out, but she knows all my people. This would be like complicated. So there's that too. But what's just so interesting is, I've been thinking a lot about the differences between friendship and community. And for, community, like if you even look up the definition, it says, when you share a habitat, or when you share interests, right? I have community. These are people who are helping me and we help each other for this mutual thing. And then you have friendship, which is a little bit deeper and more intentional. These are people who have raised their hand to say, I elect to be your friend, to show up for you, to have mutual trust, respect, and reciprocity. And those things can be a little bit different. The reason I bring that up is because we have these longtime friends who maybe aren't our, close friends anymore as we grow, but they're so deeply interwoven into our community. Like, you help with my children, you help with my, aging parents, and we help each other with resources. We have a history. So there's something about it that's familiar and practical, but maybe you're not really my bestie anymore, or I feel like I don't know you personally anymore. And maybe that's okay. You've become a part of my community, and it's tricky sometimes navigating that. But we need kind of all those layers. And for women specifically, there's just there's so much. I was looking into the research around how, we used to live in these, patrilocal societies, meaning the woman typically moves for the man. And so it was just saying that, like, this might be one of the reasons why, talking and socializing is so important, and why we try to be really kind when we first meet other women. I'm trying to signal I'm new to the group. I'm not a threat. It's important we find our alliances. We're typically, back in the day, we're caring for each other's children. So I have to trust you because you're helping me with my baby. So
Mm.
there's just so much about what brings us together, and the need that we have to be close and to work together, and all those things, because a lot of that responsibility does fall on the woman of the house.
Hmm. What about the difference between, and I think we talked about this on the last episode, but I find it fascinating. Like, obviously, I think a lot of women would consider their spouse like their best friend. Sometimes I say that, like, oh, my husband's my best friend. But what are the differences in what we're getting out of, let's say, a female to female friendship versus a female to a male or your husband?
Yeah. That's interesting because I have heard the women who were like, I mean, my husband's my best friend. I think I even recently saw a TikTok making a joke about, your actual best friend standing next to you at your wedding when you're saying your vows, and you're like, you're my best friend. And she's like, well, then who the hell am I? So,
Yeah.
so that's, it's tricky, and who am I to say what you got going on? I will say this though. There are very special things and specific benefits of a female to female friendship according to the research, right? And it doesn't speak for everybody, but it speaks to tendencies of a certain group. That's what research is for. And they find that, most of us are familiar with fight or flight as stress responses, but they did that study again, this time with women, because they did it with men the first time. And they found that we have two additional stress responses called tend or befriend. So in the face of distress, we either go to those we deem more vulnerable to take care of them, or we go with our friends. We go together and gather, right? And when we do that, it decreases our cortisol, the stress hormone, increases oxytocin. We feel less stressed. We feel more bonded. And so it happens when we come together with other women. There's also research that shows that, women in a professional workspace, if they have a female dominated circle, those women tend to make more money and advance quicker at their jobs. And I'm wondering if that's because we kind of act as social hubs for one another. So I'm telling you tips on what you ought to do. And you can kind of use me as a model of how to be at the job, whatever. But there are lots of things that happen when two women come together. And it can be different sometimes with men. One interesting thing I read a couple of years ago, they were looking at the difference between men and women's friendships, and they found that when men are distressed, they tend to seek the support of their parents or their partner, but women seek the counsel of their partner and their friends, which means a lot of us are doing the emotional labor for the men in our lives because they won't go to their friends, right? So it's
Mm.
just interesting to see, like, a platonic woman to woman relationship. What we offer to one another is there balance in that, and then male to female friendships, or having a romantic relationship that's also your friendship. The dynamics are just all different, but I think there's just a lot to be said for women to women friendships. They can stress you, but they also offer a very unique form of emotional support and social identity support.
Let's talk about, so one of the major topics that is talked about on social media is the division of labor. So domestic labor, especially. And so how do you see an imbalance in domestic labor affecting friendships, especially when we become a mom or we have little kids?
I love this question so much because we are often drawing direct connections between those two things. And yes, and I know you talk about it a lot on your platform, which I'm so grateful for. There's a couple things. One is if you're married to a man, y'all live in a house, and it's just understood that you will take care of the baby, you'll do the laundry, and you're just better at it. I do it, but you're better at it. You have to think about how many more hours you're investing to taking care of the home. The research already tells us that people in their 30s and 40s have less leisure time available. I think it's an average of 4 hours a week than any
Wow.
other generation. You put on top of that being a mom, and you put on top of that me picking up more hours of work in our house than you. And no, I don't have time to be with my friends. We just talked about the emotional benefits and psychological benefits of being with my friend. So this is about so much more than I want to go to happy hour. This is I need to de-stress. I need to have conversations where I feel seen for as somebody outside of my identity as a mom, but I don't have the physical hours available to do that. I often see, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts, but like, I kind of theorize that when we become parents, like, yes, both of our lives change, but I feel like a woman's life changes more, which means it impacts every other area of my life. If he's still easily able to golf and go on trips and go to work, you're still doing all the things. People have to ask, "Oh, are you a dad?" Because I can't tell. Nothing about the surface of your appearance of your life has changed, but our friendships are sometimes the first things to go. I was also talking to a woman named Dr. Joyce Benenson. She's kind of like the OG of work and sex differences and things like that. And she was saying that her theory of why women's friendships are more fragile is because she says that, we are charged with so much responsibility in the home, caregiving, and things like that, that we have less tolerance for being betrayed by non kin. So if I have to survive for my home to thrive, I am more sensitive to being betrayed or gossiped about or being let down by people outside my house because I need to be whole for the people inside my house and my community. And so her theory was that we have less tolerance because we're more important, quote unquote, in the home and charged with so much. So it's just, there's a lot of things at play of where our partnership, our home life directly impacts the other ways in which we are fulfilled and seen and connected outside of the home, which are really, really important.
I always say that, like, one of my pieces of advice is have a life outside of the home. But I think a lot of the time what happens is if mom is physically giving birth to a baby, now she is
Hmm.
recovering at home. So that takes, a variable amount of time. And in that time, typically they're the ones that's taking over like the feeding, the doing all the things. And then from there, I think it just snowballs.
Hmm.
Like you were saying, in a heterosexual relationship, the man's life doesn't necessarily change very much. Like he's continuing to go to work. He's, doing all the things that he used to do for the most part. Whereas physically, usually at the beginning of the baby's life, mom can't
Hmm.
because they're recovering. And then from there, like in Canada, maternity leave, usually it's the mom that is going to take off that time to be with the baby. And now it almost sets them up to become the default parent.
Hmm.
And one of the issues of having one parent be a default parent is that now the other parent can't step in to that role, which then makes it very difficult for the default parent to be able to leave the home for an extended period of time. So it's like this, people always ask, like, how does one person end up being the default parent? And I think there's lots of different ways that it ends up happening, but I can see that being like a very common scenario. And it's not necessarily the other parent's fault,
Mm.
Like it's something that there needs to be a conversation. Like they need to communicate with each other. Because I think what happens is, like you were saying, the mom, it's very easy for them to just not prioritize like seeing friends or maintaining hobbies or interests that they had previously. And then it's like Groundhog Day. You just like live the same day over and over. And all of a sudden your kid's 3 and you're like, what is my life now?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have friends. Like, I
Mhm.
barely see anybody. So do you think it's like, what would your advice be to somebody who is, let's say, pregnant or has a young kid? How do we prioritize our friendships or make sure that that doesn't happen?
Yeah. So the first thing would be it is really, really helpful when you are with a supportive partner. And I know some of us are like, well, too late for that because I picked them and this we're rolling. But it's
Yeah.
really, really helpful to have the guy who's like, babe, I got the kids. Go somewhere. Go talk to your girl. I thank God that I have that, that my husband, okay, I got them. Go do your thing. Right. And vice versa. So making it known, first of all, to your partner that that's a goal of yours, like anything else. So if you're realizing, man, my friendships are suffering, the first thing I'm going to do is have him hold me accountable. Babe, I really want to pour into my friendships. I feel like I'm losing myself and I'm losing my mind. I think I need to make more time for that. That's really important for me. I feel happier in the home when I'm that way. And I need that time. And so to help him, because you are a part of me being able to do that, we're a team. So I'm going to make it
Mhm.
known to you first. The second thing is to let my friends know that I'm feeling behind and I miss them. And it's so interesting because one of my theories of why our friendships sometimes falter as women is because, well, one, the research shows we have higher expectations in our friendships than men do, but also because I think that we anticipate that in every other context, we need to have conversations. Like at work, you literally have, like performance reviews. We're talking about our progress and what we need. With our spouse, we're like, babe, we need to talk what's going on. How are we doing this in the house? But there's something about friendship where we don't do that because we subscribe to the idea that friendship should be organic, natural. I shouldn't have to say it. I shouldn't have to say it because you're a woman. Like, you should know what I need. Like, you're another woman. And so that only compounds the issue of me feeling like I'm not getting my needs met in friendship because I feel like I shouldn't have to say it. So you're going to have to shake that off too. That would be step two. So one, tell your partner, I'm making this a goal. And two, tell your friends what you need, not in an accusatory way, but position it as an invitation. Hey, I'm feeling like I'm so out of the loop. I know I've been in a dark cave with the baby, but I really miss you guys. Can we do Friday morning FaceTimes? Right? How can you remove the barriers to spending time together? Because I often say, if you still have in your brain an idea of hanging out with friends as being hours long brunches or late nights out, you're going to continue to say, I don't have time for friends. But we have to
Mm.
upgrade our ideas and our scripts of how we did friendship in our early 20s. It's time to upgrade it. That doesn't fit. It's no longer appropriate with where I am right now. So hanging out together might look like I'm running to the store, come with me and fill me in on your date last night. Or I'm doing laundry. So let me FaceTime you while I fold these clothes. Tell me everything about your doctor's appointment last week. And that's what friendship looks like for us in this season. That's how we're clocking hours together. So the second thing would be to, voice the support you need so that your friends can work with you to figure out what does friendship look like for us right now. And three, kind of shake off old ideas that don't fit of what it looks like to spend time with friend. You might have to kind of adapt and negotiate with them what it looks like at this time. And then the final thing I'll say is remember that your kids need you to pour into your friendships. My kids
Mm.
need to see me model what it looks like to be like, okay, I'll see you guys later. Mama's going out. Or they need to see a friend come over. All right, you guys go in the playroom. Mommy's going to chat with, Miss Janet. They need to see me prioritize that for myself because I can't tell you how many women I've had in coaching sessions where I say, what were friendships like for your mom? And they're like, oh my God, my mom didn't have any friends. So those are some things to kind of get it going once we decide we need to be intentional.
Have you looked into anything with regard to social media? And I feel like, I don't know, like there's this false sense of connection when you're on social media and you're, like DMing with someone or they're commenting on your stuff, or you feel like you're following along with their life, but really like you haven't had any kind of meaningful connection or in real life connection with them for like 2 years or something. Like, does social media give us a false sense of feeling like we have connections? But then at the same time, I'm pretty sure the research shows that the more you're on social media, the lonelier you feel or something like that. I don't know if that's just for teenagers, but I've heard a statistic like that. What are your thoughts on social media with
Yeah,
regard to
totally. So
friendships?
everything you see, I see, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, I connected with my friend because I just sent her a DM. I sent her some, fire
A funny
emojis.
gif.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're connected. So one exercise I like to give clients who are we're trying to get more intentional and feel more satisfied. We do have a period where we look at social media and our relationship to it and how it impacts our friendships. And one thing that we look at is, can you tell me something that's going on with her that she has not posted? That is not public information. If you can't, right there, it's just a beginning. It's just just something to get us started. That's one indicator. I don't know what's going on with you. If you can tell me like, oh yeah, they just went to the pumpkin patch and all that. Right. Did you get that from social? Can you tell me anything that she did not put on her stories or account about what's going on in her life? Because we have to remember, oh, yep, that's right. That's not the extent of what's going on in her life. And it may not be an accurate reflection of what's going on in her life. So I shouldn't have access to the same things the public does to the same knowledge. I mean, it would at least question the intimacy of the friendship at the very least, right?
Mm,
They also say that social media should be supplemental, not a replacement. So, like, yeah, thank God for technology if I'm trying to keep in touch with long distance friends. Thank God for technological apps like Bumble for friends that, lets me connect with new moms in the area. Thank God for that. But that is not my friendships. I know people who have social anxiety and other issues because social media tends to remind me of these groups. I understand that there are other groups who are like, hey, this is the only way I can connect right now. I have a chronic illness. I honor all that. However, the baseline for friendship shouldn't be this is how I do friendship is popping off some text in a DM. It should be supplemental. They also, to your point, yes, the more time people spend alone you are, they're trying to figure out the correlation though of the direction of that. Like do lonely people spend time on social or vice versa? Either way, we know you need to get outside and touch some grass at some point, right? And go be a real person. And so I think it's right there. So we get very comfortable with it. I know in motherhood, especially the early stages, it's very tempting. I know that I was very disenchanted with motherhood during the season of breastfeeding and realizing I'm spending a lot of time by myself. Even when we go out to a gathering, I'm in the room by myself every 20 minutes. So social media is what I'm doing while I'm doing other things, while the kids play, while you're breastfeeding. So I think moms are especially on there sometimes during our down period because we just need a minute. But like what happens during that time? Do I find afterwards I feel inadequate? Like, dang, everybody's doing something cool and I'm just here, or am I comparing her partner and what they do and her kids and how they're advancing, because that's all I see, so you
mm.
would have to question, how do I feel when I'm done? Does it enhance my relationships or is it my friendships? It's something to look at. And the last thing I'll say is I was once talking to a client of mine and she was telling me about a health thing she's going through. And I said, oh gosh, that sounds so hard. How have your friends been showing up for you? What kind of support are you getting? And she said, oh gosh, they don't know. I said, well, how do they not know? She's like, well, I'm not, we do our catch ups a couple times a year. I'm not going to burden them with that during a catch up. And I just thought, wow, and not judging her, but it just showed me the magnitude of our disconnect that they only catch up so infrequently that she's not going to be real during the catch up because we only have so much
Right.
time and I don't want to bring you down. And so it just made me think how many of us have that and don't even know it. So I just think getting curious at least about your relationship with social media and how that might be impacting the satisfaction you get from your current friendship landscape is something worth sitting down for a second to facilitating a moment to evaluate.
So, moms listening right now thinking, oh, I would like to make some friends. Maybe they don't live, you know, they moved or they feel isolated. They don't have many friends around. You mentioned the app, and that was one of my questions for you is like, there are friendship apps now? Question mark?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in Canada. I'll have to like look into that. But yeah, friendship apps are a thing. So Bumble for Friends, most people are familiar with Bumble, a global dating app. You swipe on people's profiles. If you match, then you can begin talking to one another. Well, on the app, people started to put in their profile, I'm just here for friends, actually. I am just here for friends. Let me be clear. It started happening so much that they created like a Bumble BFF version. And then that got so popular, it's now its own app. And the idea is that this is a place you can go. You're in a space with a bunch of other people who have raised their hands intentionally to say, I'm actually in the market, which I would argue kind of reduces any feelings of fear of rejection because there's a baseline here. We're all here for the same thing, as opposed to trying to befriend the mom at the park who's like, girl, I'm, I'm not in the mood, not in the market. So I know
Yeah.
everybody here is on the same page. And then it helps you to kind of expedite the process of finding your people because it's people who are local to you and you can lean into things. So you can say, hey, I'm a mom of two looking for other mom friends who we can go to the park together. Like be specific from the beginning about your friendship goals because yeah, some people might turn that away and be like, ugh, I'm not into it, but that's great. I'm getting closer to find the women who are like, ugh, same. So you want to lean in very specifically. I'm looking for this right now. Here's what I've got going on. So leveraging technology, it doesn't make you desperate. It makes you resourceful. And I think that's one good way to make friends. I'll give you three other quick ones. The second thing is to integrate more routine into your life, which I know is hard with littles, but we tend to romanticize. It was so much easier with friends in school. Well, a lot of it's because you were clocking hours with the same people. So those were your options. Well, a lot of us, maybe we work from home or things like that. How can you bring routine into your life? So how can I, if I've got the kids at home, how can we do library time at the same time every day? How can I walk them in the park every day? How can I work at the coffee shop every Friday for 2 hours? Because people are creatures of habit. I'm likely going to see the same folks doing the same things. And now it's less intimidating to say, oh, hello, or to ask a question because we see each other all the time. So, how can I manufacture opportunities for myself the way I used to have and make some regularity and rhythm in my life to position me for new friends that feels less intimidating? Another thing you can do is leverage the help of super connectors. So these are people you know, women who you might not be friends with, but you know them, who really thrive on being like, "Oh, Renee, you should meet my friend Tiffany. Oh my God, yeah, let's get that girl. We need to hit her up because there's no shame in pursuing more connection in your life. There's no shame in that. So to hit that girl up and be like, hey, I'm actually looking to get more plugged in. And I thought of you because you're always out and about and doing something fun. And I was just wondering, do you know of any events around here that are worth checking out? Do you know of any groups around here that are worth checking out? The subtext is, I need some friends, but it feels a little less intense. And the average person is flattered to be thought of and eager to help. And who knows, you might get a plus one. She might say, oh my God, yeah, I'm in a book club. We meet every Tuesday. You should come with me. But how do people know how to meet your need if you're too embarrassed to make the need known? So these are just some things that we can work into our strategy to position ourselves to connect with new friends.
My friend here, I would consider a super connector, like 1,000%. One thing that she was running in the summertime is like a mom group.
Hmm.
And so she has a little bit of a social media presence or like a big presence. And she would just be like, "Oh yeah, we're all going to meet like at this park at this time, once a week." And I went a couple times even though I don't have a baby to push in a stroller. I was just like the creeper that was like, "Hey everybody." But yeah, like such a nice
Mm.
thing. And if it was raining, they would switch it to meet up at a coffee shop and it was so nice to see all these moms just get together with their little babies, put the baby on a mat and everybody just talking, having coffee. It was such a cool weekly thing. So,
Yeah, and I love that. I love that there's sometimes that one person who's like, "Hey, I feel comfortable doing it. Let's go. You guys," and you just have to show up. And I hope that seeing all those moms shows us like, okay, it's not just me. It's not just me because that will keep you stuck. If I privately believe it's just me and everybody else already has their friends and I'm too late, those are those mindsets that are definitely going to indirectly engage or like impact the way you engage with other people. And the last thing I want to say, it just has a mindset thing, because I know I gave tangibles as a general mindset. Even though I'm a friendship educator, when people are like, I want to make some new friends, I encourage them to prioritize connection over friendship because friendship will be a natural byproduct of saying, you know what? I am a connector. That is who I am. So, yes, I'm going to initiate that text and write that friend out for coffee, say hello, because that's who I am. And the research shows that when you make things a noun instead of a verb, you're more likely to do it. So, for example, if I say, I am a connector and like embody that as an identity, I'm more likely to follow through with that because that's who I am, as opposed to I'm going to try to connect a couple times a week. I'm going to connect more.
Mm,
No, I'm a connector, right? So that means I'm going to do these things as an extension of my identity as opposed to just these random behaviors I try on during moments of fleeting confidence. No, this is who I am. And so, yeah, maybe when you go to the mom group at the park, it's nothing more than a really fun Monday afternoon. And that's all it has to be. I'm just going to show up and connect and have meaningful conversations. But if I make that a lifestyle, friendship is inevitable. And so I think for those who are trying to get their feet wet, but are feeling a lot of pressure to turn every mom they meet into like, okay, my new friend, just position yourself to show up for other people, even if it's for a moment, to engage in a curious conversation, and friendship will follow.
yeah. And I think it's easy. Like, even for me, I'm not in the baby stage anymore. Milo's at school, but I work from home and I get very like, I make my own schedule. I can do whatever I want. But sometimes it's so easy to just be like, "Oh, you wanna go for coffee? You wanna grab lunch?" Ugh, like, but then it's, like, disrupting my regular routine. I have to get dressed, like, my worst nightmare getting dressed. But, like, sometimes, like, you just have to go. And so I'm mindful of that now to prioritize, going for coffee, going for lunch, maybe saying yes to the event because I get to go with one of my friends and it's just a time for us to like hang out. But I think, especially when you have little kids, because now it's like you got to get them out of the house
Mhm.
too. But you feel so, it's so rewarding after you get out of the house. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way nowadays because so many people work from home.
Mhm.
You're not in the office chatting with people all day and like seeing people on lunch break grabbing a coffee with someone. You're literally sitting at home by yourself.
Mhm.
So it's hard to break out of that and be like, yeah, I'm going to go meet whoever for lunch or for a coffee.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I know, and I've heard that as well. People say the same thing of like, okay, I know this is good for me, but also, and what I love is that you said afterwards, it was so, rewarding. Like you feel so good. That is a thing that I think can carry us through is when you're on the fence. Think about the last time you went out. How did you
Mm,
feel after? You probably felt like, okay, that was fun. You probably felt energized. It felt good to be seen for a second, to laugh. Remember that. That's what you're going for future you, which sounds kind of cheesy, but you're going for future you because we rarely regret it. I mean, I think if you regret going out, you need to look at the company you keep. If I'm going out with this girl because I feel like I have to, that says something. But if you're going out with people who you're like, I enjoy her, it's never going to be a bad time. And if it helps, especially for my introverted friend, it's okay to put a time duration on it. As a matter of fact, if I invite anybody out, I always throw in duration, which I feel like is like an underrated thing that helps you guys have a good time. So, for example, if I say, "Oh yeah, this new wine bar actually opened up down the street, and apparently their sangria is amazing. Do you want to go check it out for like an hour or so around 6?" That way it's
yeah.
like, I'm letting you know we're not gonna be here all day, but there's something that makes people increase their chances of saying yes, knowing like, yeah, I can commit for an hour. Yeah, let's just do an hour. That's all I've got. And so you're never gonna regret it. You can make it fit for you, but saying no to it is just, I'm sorry, it's not an option. There's just way too much research that draws a direct line between the strength of your social support in your physical, mental, and emotional health. So we've got to stop talking about friendship from a recreational perspective, like you need someone to go to brunch with, and more like a wellness imperative, because that's just how
Mm,
critical it is.
I love that. Let's end on how to have a hard conversation with a friend. So, what's your advice? This is a good one because people are always talking about romantic relationships, like, I'm guilty of that too, but what about friendships? Like, bringing up something difficult with your friend?
Yes. Yes. So this is tricky. What I want to do here is I'm about to give you like a step by step to have hard conversations, but I want to anchor it in this. A couple moments ago, we talked about that Harvard happiness study that said it's quality relationships that determine how happy and how well we are. I can't have a quality relationship if I'm too scared to tell you. You made me uncomfortable. I don't like
Mm,
how we operate. I need something I'm not getting. This is not a quality relationship because I carry that tension. It turned into resentment. I become passive aggressive. I I complain about you to my other friends and to my husband, but I never tell you. And so that impacts me individually and it impacts us relationally. So the skill of having hard conversations directly impacts my health because it impacts the quality of this relationship. That's how serious it is. If you have a friend who's doing something, saying something, needs something, and those needs aren't getting met, there's probably a gap between what you're getting and what you need. It's not an option to bring that up. You have to bring it up. So the first thing I'll say is you have to reframe your attitude toward conflict in general. Some of us grew up seeing that as a very bad thing, or there was yelling in our home, whatever, right? I'm not a psychologist, so I won't get into it. But you're going to have to see confrontation as a good thing because there's research that finds that on the other side of healthy conflict, people report feeling closer to one another. I know I've experienced that in friendships and with my husband, where after we hashed it out, I'm like, wow, okay, I feel like you get me a little more now. We got through that together. So if you want to be closer, healthy conflict is almost a prerequisite. Okay. So tell yourself that conflict is an opportunity to meet a need or to solve a problem. That's what conflict is. It's not evidence that you guys are not compatible as friends as you thought. That's not what it is. It's a good thing. So the first thing I like to say is there a way that you can bring it up during a playful light moment, right? Instead of like I need to talk to you about like art can depending on the situation, can I bring it up when we're kind of on a high, laughing or giggling and just say like, hey, I wanted to mention something to you actually. Like because I'm already pocketing it in like a warm moment. Could be a first thing. The second thing is I like to go through this exercise is what is the number one reason you do not want to have the conversation? Meaning, why are you reluctant? Because I would argue that that should be your opening sentence. So if I'm nervous that she's going to go and tell the other girls and it's going to become drama, if I'm nervous she's going to blow up at me, if I'm nervous she's going to withdraw, it's my first sentence. So I might say, hey, I have been wanting to mention something to you, but the last thing I want is for it to be awkward between us. But I was thinking about it and I'm like, you know what? It would be totally worth it because I really love it when we're on the same page. Okay. Or, hey, I wanted to
Mm,
bring something up, but the last thing I want is for it to be a source of drama with the other girls. But I thought, no, it's worth it to mention it to you because I like when you and I are open. Okay. So I'm telling you, I almost didn't do this because this is my fear, but I thought about it. It's worth it. Let's lean in. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to talk about the impact of her behavior instead of her behavior. So I'm not going to say, you're so judgy, like these elusive things you can't, because she's going to say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
yeah.
Okay. So you are less likely to be able to contest my experience of you. So instead, I'm going to say, hey, sometimes when you share your views on the screen time stuff or how I keep the house and things like that, I can't help but to feel like my choices aren't good enough, or I can't help but to feel like you don't approve of my choices. That's just how I feel. So I just wanted to bring that up to you and try to understand, right? So I'm letting you know the impact. The right friends are going to be like, oh my gosh, wait, what? No, I didn't mean blah, 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 blah. Okay. But I'm not going to accuse. I'm going to let you know the impact. And then after I do that, I'm going to ask more questions than statements. So instead of like, you need to stop being judgy, or like, I don't like when you do that and it's messed up. It's just, what do you mean when you say those things? Or what are you really trying to get me to do when you point that out? What's the goal here? Right? I'm curious because I might be wrong. And then finally, we're going to end by collaborating on how things will look differently in the future. So if I'm upset that she's always late, I'm not going to say, you're always late. That's so disrespectful. And I need you to I'm going to say, hey, I noticed the last couple times we got together, you weren't able to get here, like just kind of right at that time. And sometimes it makes me a little anxious. Like when I'm waiting for you to show up, girl, like I get anxious. I don't know when we're going to roll in. And it kind of, changes the schedule up for the rest of my day. So I was just wondering, are we meeting like too far from your house, or did you want to meet up like a little bit earlier? And then after we hash that, I'm going to say, okay, cool. So moving forward, if you think you're going to be late, just give me a heads up. Yeah, because it'll change how I know when to start getting ready. Just give me a heads up. That cool? Okay, cool. Right? Like these things mean we're a team. My goal is to connect with you, is the goal, and to solve the problem. I'm not coming at you. I'm not accusing you. And we're also going to move forward after to show you we're okay. So after we're done, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, okay, are we still going shopping on Saturday? Because you have to help me find a dress for this. I'm showing you we're cool. But we had
Yeah.
to have that conversation to be on the same page.
Which, once you understand the importance of friendship and then also what happens when you're not bringing these things up, like building resentment and then it ruins future, when you get together with that friend, it's going to be festering like inside of you. So yeah, just address it. But even like it's hard, women just in general are like conflict avoidant. And I think a huge part of it too is like we're so concerned about not making somebody else feel uncomfortable. Like I know that's my issue. Like I will go to the ends of the earth to like make sure that someone's not uncomfortable. And so if you're bringing something up like that, I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't want them to feel bad," or
Mhm.
like, But yeah, at the end of the day, it's benefiting both people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. And to your point, like, because I want to validate the woman who's like, "Oh, Danielle, you just made it sound so easy. It's really hard." Yeah, that's called ruinous empathy. When we're so concerned about the other person's feelings, we become immobilized and it's detrimental to us. That's
Yeah.
ruinous empathy that women go through. So like, yeah, have be mindful of her feelings. I think that shows that you're a great friend, but I can't have it be, okay, well, then I'll sacrifice my comfort, my resent. It doesn't make sense. And the second thing is you deserve to be intimately known in your friendships. But if I'm going to be quiet about what makes me comfortable and what I need, because I just don't want to, ruffle your feathers, I will never be intimately known. So it starts with you believing I'm worth being known. And a part of that is communicating my preferences, needs, and desires. So, I think those two things go together. For those of us who say, like, I just feel like my friends just don't get me, they don't support me, I always immediately get curious about any friction you have with them. Do they know? Do you ever say anything you need? Have you said the things you need that they're not tending to? So
Mhm.
kind of, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Okay, this was a lovely conversation. So before you go, I wanted to know what your favorite friendship date is. Like if you and a friend are going to go do something, like what's your favorite thing to do?
Okay, my new favorite thing to do is to walk around Target with a friend, just because I'm trying to take my own advice of like sometimes we don't have the time, invite them on an errand. And it's my new favorite thing to lean into. I gotta go to Target. You wanna come with? And so to like get the tea as I'm also like getting tea, it's like so
Browsing Target?
practical?
This is hilarious because I just went for coffee with my friend yesterday and we were like, we should plan to just go shopping one day. Like,
Mm,
let's go shopping. Like, when's the last time you were like, you want to go to a mall and just walk around and browse? Because if I go into a mall, it's like I'm in and out. Like, I have a mission. Like, I don't want to be there because I'm in a rush. I'm like, let's block off a few hours and just go walk around a
mm.
mall and buy stuff we don't need. She's like, this is amazing. It's so true. Target would be a
Oh,
dream. Like, that's lovely. Are there Trader Joe's in
there
Florida?
are. Yeah.
I'm obsessed. We don't have them in Canada, but like
Oh,
I'm so obsessed. Every time I go to the States, and we only live 2 hours from the
oh,
Buffalo
okay.
Trader
Yep.
Joe's. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I every few months I'm gonna go there, stock up the car, come back, like freeze everything. I love
Love that
Trader
for you.
Joe's so much. Yeah. Anyways, I'll invite a friend next time I go. So, where can people find you online? And tell us again the title of your book and where we can pre order it.
Yeah, so the book is called Fighting for Our Friendships, and it just takes both a high level view of the mechanics of women's friendships, and then it gets down to the day to day business strategies of being friends. And that comes out in May, and I'm so excited to get it in people's hands. But until then, everything lives at betterfemalefriendships.com, the podcast, the blog, and all those things. But I just, I'm grateful to you to, take a minute to say, we need to have this conversation because our friendships are a part of the motherhood journey. And I appreciate you for that. And I just am so glad that more and more women are having open conversations about how they want more from their
Mm,
female friendships and are willing to put in the work the same way they would anything else. So it's a beautiful thing to see.
amazing. Well, thank you so much. And next time I'm in Florida, actually, I'm going to be in Florida because I'm a little bit obsessed with Disney right now. Um, Maybe we can go for coffee.
I would love that. Or you can
Or
a
no,
Target.
we're going to go to
Yeah, yeah.
Target.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And I'm on a roll.